Hey everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. This is the Buyers Auto Practice Report. I am Austin Ward. That's Tim May and Jeremy Birmingham. The Buckeyes are a couple days away from traveling to take on Michigan State, get back to action after last week's cancellation. Now, we all know that a lot can happen in the next 2 days, but the Buckeyes have practiced Tuesday and Wednesday. They've got another one scheduled on Thursday. So all signs are still pointing towards Ohio State being able to play, potentially get on track to stay for the Big Ten title game with the 6-game minimum still in place. But a couple tests, including Friday night, 8 p.m. before the Buckeyes leave, I believe is what Ryan Day said. A little bit of a change from their normal routine, Tim, but that's just the way 2020 goes.
Yeah, they were going to basically do the same thing last Friday, if you remember correctly, and the late test. And because, just clarify for our listeners or watchers, when they have a noon game, the test the night before is what matters in terms of whether somebody, is positive. And when they have an 8 p.m. game on Saturday, it's a test around, I think, around noon on the day of the game. And, we know Justin Hilliard and the challenge he faced over there at Penn State. But, yes, interesting, on the Ryan Day show / Kevin Wilson show / Larry Johnson show today, I think the most interesting thing that was finally revealed, which we've been talking about for a while, it looks like there's going to be a little bit of a coaching staff challenge too on Saturday, and they didn't reveal what coaches were also involved from the standpoint of maybe a positive test like Ryan Day was. But moving Kevin Wilson to the field is one big change they're making, and because he's going to assist Larry Johnson in basically game tactics along with calling the offense. But we're all eagerly awaiting the availability report whenever it comes out, if indeed it does come out this week.
Yeah, it's supposed to. And look, without Ryan Day, you have to have a 10th, assistant that can be on the headsets and a full-time assistant. Berm and I have kicked this around, Tim. I know the obvious choice here on the offensive staff would be Keenan Bailey. Berm, for anybody who doesn't know him and he might be playing a bigger role this week, he's obviously been important to recruiting, but put you on the spot there. If they need to make him that guy to help fill Ryan Day's spot, what does Keenan Bailey bring the Buckeyes?
Keenan's going to be a star in the coaching industry at some point. He's been at Ohio State for 5 years now. He's worked with the quarterbacks. He's worked with the receivers. He works with Corey Dennis now. He's the natural fit as a guy that understands the offense and understands the terminology and understands the culture better than anybody there. I don't want to bury the lead here. We're talking about availability report. Let's be clear that Kevin Wilson did say something pretty important in his 5 minutes on the radio show.
I was going to get to it. I am bearing the lead, but
yeah.
He said that one of the big perks of being on the field was going to be the opportunity to look Justin in the eye during the game. So for anyone wondering out there, panicking, is Justin Fields going to play? Unless Kevin Wilson just set up the world's greatest, most elaborate, on-the-spot lie of all time, Justin Fields will be playing on Saturday. So we can all take a deep breath right there, right? We can exhale.
Well, if you want to, there's still 2 days to go.
Sure. Okay. Last week, the differences between this week and last Wednesday, the practice was not a practice. It was a walkthrough. This week, Ryan Day said the practice on Wednesday was a really good practice. I think that, clearly 2020 has taught us anything can happen, but the good news is the Buckeyes seem fully intent on playing, and whether that means one additional coach, 2 additional coaches, who the heck knows, but as of 12:45 on Thursday, I was told that they don't know exactly what those plans are going to be to replace Ryan Day yet.
It was interesting, to listen to this, and obviously Kevin Wilson slipping that in about Justin Fields is probably all anybody really wanted to hear from that show or this show as we break it down on the Buyers Auto Practice Report. But anytime they named specific players, I think people were probably jumping at that, and Kevin Wilson did that a couple times, also with Luke Farrell and other guys in that tight end room. Larry Johnson did that with Jonathan Cooper.
Yep.
Tim, we've talked about this going back to
Luke
last
Farrell.
week. Yeah, when that availability report comes out, then that's the situation. Whether Ohio State would, I don't expect them to do this. They could confirm it on Friday night with a travel roster, because at that point, if you're not on the trip, you can't play. I don't expect that they will do that. They'll continue to wait until Saturday morning. But, the coaching staff, all 3 of those guys today on that radio show mentioned they will be shorthanded. There will be other guys who have to step up. They talked specifically even at one point about the young guys in the defensive backfield and the secondary that may or may not be related to COVID and more directly tied to what happened against Indiana.
Yeah, that might be more Penix 19 than COVID-19, but you're exactly right. I'm expecting several starters not to be around on Saturday, just based on what I've heard. Just like I had heard that there might be a person or two or more on the coaching staff who might not be available on Saturday. And like you just talked about Keenan Bailey, I mean, I what do you call it? I confirm everything that Berm had to say about that young man. I mean, we've watched him grow, ridiculously into the role of being a full-time coach for somebody one of these days. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes down on Saturday. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think there's a chance on both sides of the ball they could be missing a starter or two or three. Like you said, we have to wait to see what happens. It did seem like Kevin Wilson was very excited when he was asked about number 2 and number 5 on the Ohio State offense, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Would it be, how exciting it would be to see them playing again. So maybe let one drop there. That, in fact, they'll be available. We'll see. But we're all keen to see the active list. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it makes it hard to really dive too far into this. We've got our bold predictions coming on Friday and score prediction on Saturday morning. Like, it is difficult. Ohio State is still top to bottom so much more talented than Michigan State that even if you don't know which 5-6 players may be out, it still shouldn't necessarily change the outcome. But you don't know exactly how the game might play out, depending on what positions those are, how that changes the plans, and whether Kevin Wilson elects for a more conservative game plan, if the weather's bad. I mean, all these factors that normally I don't even consider have me kind of rethinking what kind of game we'll actually see on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say this, and I figured I'd wait. But when you're talking roster 1 to 85, Ohio State is so much better than Michigan State that it shouldn't matter if they lose 6 guys or 4 starters or 6 starters. I mean, as we mentioned last week, as long as number 1 is out there and as long as he has a couple of his primary guys on the outside, I don't think that you're going to see a major shift in what they're capable of doing. Now, what they actually do is certainly going to be interesting to watch. But the Buckeyes recruit better than anybody in the country, and you do that for moments like this. I don't know that a head coach not being available makes that big of a difference to Vegas. Certainly doesn't seem to, because the number there is over 3 touchdowns for a road game with all this stuff happening. So, what you said, though, is accurate. We can talk about all this stuff till we're blue in the face, but until an availability report comes out or a travel roster tomorrow on Friday, it is sort of just a crapshoot.
And yeah, but it's interesting about this, and without a doubt about the rosters, you're right. But if you let 1 or 2 players on their side who are pretty good players go off like they did in the second half against Indiana, Ty Freifogel probably earned Big Ten All Big Ten from just his performance in that game. He and Michael Penix Jr. developed a relationship there in the second half of that game that was uncanny. But Antoine Simmons can be a disruptor for their defense. He can come out of nowhere and make a play, which you can be playing extremely well, and all of a sudden you have a couple of turnovers, like Ohio State had against Indiana, and it can be a kind of a different ball game. But you're right, Berm. When you look at what Las Vegas keeps saying about this game, they do at least as much diligence as probably we do, about the matchups, and they probably already know who is and isn't starting, et cetera. We have a little bit of a clue.
Yeah, they don't need to report it. They just need to know.
They just need to know. All they're worried about is, well, at the end of the day, did they make out? And they almost always make out. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and Berm, to your point, I remember at the end of last year when Mark D'Antonio was organizing his messy exit, and people were asking you and I, what – is there anybody that Ohio State could take from Michigan State? Will anybody be in the transfer portal? And you look – I don't think that there's anyone on Michigan State's team that would start for Ohio State. And Simmons, Tim brought up, is the only one, but Ohio State has played at such a high level at linebacker.
Yeah. Great.
I've always been, and I mean, this isn't a Michigan State show, so I don't want to dive too far down this rabbit hole. But I love Xavier Henderson at safety. I think he is a guy that from Pickerington, Ohio, who should have been a Buckeye 4 years ago. I think that they should have taken him, and if he would have been available in the transfer portal, I think he'd be starting at Ohio State. Antoine Simmons obviously is a guy who was committed to Ohio State for a long time before ending up at Michigan State. And I know Antoine is one of my favorite recruits in the last handful of years. There's nothing he would like better than to end his time at Michigan State with a win in Ann Arbor across the street from his old high school at Ann Arbor Pioneer, and then a win against Ohio State to put a cap on that decision to flip years ago. But yeah, he couldn't start at Ohio State ahead of any of the current starting linebackers, as good as he's been. It's not a roster that the Buckeyes are going to look at. Even a guy like Ty Freifogel at Indiana, who you saw glimpses of that. You did see Ricky White, the wide receiver at Michigan State, who had a big game against Michigan. But every wide receiver in the country has had a big game against Michigan to this point, so you don't know how much stock to put in that.
I agree. I'm just talking about they're better players. I didn't say they would be necessarily starters at Ohio State, et cetera. But
it's Michigan State. I mean, it's not like they're playing against Illinois or something like that. It's Michigan State. So you do have to respect them. And you
also have to take into account this team has gained some confidence, man. I mean, confidence is a huge thing. I mean, just think about their 2 wins. I mean, and the ramifications for both of those wins. I mean, taking Northwestern out of the unbeaten column and beating their rival. I mean, those are huge confidence builders for a team that's otherwise knows it's not going to win a championship this year, but is building for the future, et cetera. And, and what strange circumstances all the way around. It's going to be like 32, 34 degrees at kickoff, and the wind will be like 8 or 10 miles an hour, et cetera, and Ohio State hadn't played in 2 weeks.
How many teams in the country have beaten 2 top 15 teams this year?
Yeah.
I mean, Michigan State may be one of like 2 or 3 that have done it. So, whether or not those teams are top 15 teams now or deserve to be,
which they certainly are not
when they were ranked. Regardless, I mean, it's still 2 top 15 wins.
But you know what? Hey, I had Jack Ebling, as a host of radio show up there. It's a syndicated radio show up there, but he made a great point, like you were talking about, Berm. He said, the funny thing about Ohio State, if you took their recruiting class from last year, for example, or even the one coming up this year, if any other Big Ten team got one of those almost any one of those players, that probably would have been the highest rated player in their recruiting class or close to it. Now, it's a little bit hyperbole, of course, but that's
not a lot of hyperbole, though. That's, I mean,
you know what I'm saying? That's the
truth.
Differential. That's the differential everyone else in the Big Ten is dealing with right now when it plays Ohio State.
That is not a lot of hyperbole, and it bores itself out against a team like Michigan State more than it does against Michigan or Penn State, who have recruited well despite the fact that they're struggling on the field. Penn State is not recruiting well this cycle, and Michigan is struggling now to hold on to a couple of its top guys in the class of 2021, but I digress.
We have a lot of digressions when we don't get any normal availability to chance to talk with the coaching staff or the players throughout the week. That's been another adjustment the Buckeyes have made. They have been practicing, but only that glimmer of conversation on the Ryan Day Coaches Show is all we have to work with heading into Saturday. So we've had to make it up as we go. And a lot of digressions, of course, came up on the Buyers Auto Practice Report. That's Tim May and Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. Stay with us at Lettermen Row for full coverage of Ohio State and Michigan State on Saturday at noon. Cross your fingers. We will see you there.